Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a live session which I haven't done in a while, so it took some time to set everything up and I hope everything is working well. I will just be waiting a few more minutes until we get a few more people watching, and in the meantime it would be super helpful if you guys could let me know if the sound is good, if the video quality is alright. So please keep me posted in the chat. You can see I'm there, so in the meantime I'll just be setting up the scenes a bit, just getting in the data. I downloaded the scene files from the ICO website, which I have in the chat as well. So obviously be sure to check that out. If you want to follow along, head over the website there and just download the assets and you can follow me along, or just watch the video here and you can actually it will be stored under my videos, so you can totally watch it later again and follow along if you want to. Sounds okay. So okay, perfect. There might be some delay. I have some little delay built in just to prevent some lagging, so I hope this will not be an issue. Okay, so a few more people's coming up, so pretty cool stuff. In the meantime, let me actually show the asset and the website and everything what we will be working with today, and then we can continue for sure. So I will be, let me see where it is. There you go. So you could see now this is pretty much what we have. This is the model right there. And again, as I said, if you want to follow along, head to this website, go on Meet Louise, and you can download all this stuff. It's a very good quality. It's super detailed scans, nice displacement map. So pretty much this is what you would expect from a VFX model if you work in, or if you want to work in VFX properly in like bigger studios like MPC, Weta, ILM, DreamWorks, Disney, whatever, like all the bigger companies, they will all have these kind of scans, ICT scans, Medusa scans, lots of different things. And you can expect to get these kind of assets or textures from them. So definitely worth checking out. And sometimes I'm just pausing because I'm actually reading the chat. So I have the chat on my second screen to just look at that if there's some questions. All right, so we have a few more people here, and let me just quickly show you kind of the setup in Maya. You can see it's a pretty nice high-res model. This is the wireframe with super nice curves and everything. We have all the nice detail we need. We've got the hair for the eyelashes. We've got the teal lines and everything. And we also have, I think, lots of blend shapes in here, which might not be actually transferred in this asset, which is no problem at all, actually. But then again, there's on this ISCO website, there's also a second download page for like a RenderMan tutorial, and that's actually the one I will be using just because it has some nice grooming in, like XGen grooming and all that kind of stuff. So we will not be grooming anything today. I'll be just showing you kind of pretty much how to set up the shading networks and maybe how to paint a few textures. So I think let's just get going, I would say. All right, so as I said, we will be using actually a different Maya scene file, which you can also find from the download scenes and everything. So if I bring over the download package, you will get these two folders. One is the ISCO Louise, and in here is actually the scenes with all the data we would like to work with. So source images, you can see these are converted to .tex files, which will not work in the Arnold renderer just because they are converted to RenderMan. And I tried removing the extensions and this didn't work very well. So I was just using the Maya scene file here, the Louise rig, which is actually very powerful. It has all the, as I said, all the XGen stuff. It's pretty big, but definitely a production ready asset. And I just want to show you how we would be working, or how I would be working in the industry. Like when I work, when I need to do some Lookdev at assets, this is pretty much what we be doing. I'll be just showcasing maybe 3 different departments, which is texture, Lookdev, and lighting. I will not do any comp stuff tonight, just because this should not. I don't want to go like a 5-hour session here. Like I will spend my Friday evening doing this, which is also for a change something great. So chat is pretty much going on in chat, which is great. So yeah, let me know how it goes. If you have any questions, I can try to follow up. And thanks again for all the nice feedback on my Instagram account, where I actually started to do more comprehensive stories and all that. And the same goes for my Patreon channel, which I really appreciate all the big support I'm getting from that, which really keeps me going. And if you want to say thanks or something, I would really appreciate any more support on my Patreon channel, which will be also linked after this video, I guess. So let's just open this Maya scene, which I've been talking about all the time. So obviously it's not something I have built. As I said, it's downloaded from that website, IceGo. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by them in any way. I just found it's a really good asset to work with. So let's head over to scenes and open the Louise rig.ma. And don't save. And I will be opening up that scene file right now. So let's see. Yeah, okay. So while the scene is opening, it's a 700 megabyte scene, so it takes a bit of time. It needs to load all the XGen stuff. And after that, we can get going once it's loaded. We will need to clean up a bit because I don't have RenderMan loaded, and it's looking for quite a few RenderMan nodes. So that's something which you can do as well once you load the scene and you cannot save it for some like exactly for some errors like this stuff, is because it doesn't have all the data which it's looking for. So this is kind of how it comes in. It's looking for texture. So this is pretty much the render cam. I can go into perspective, and yeah, you can see now this is actually a very high-end, very nice groom model. We can see the peach fuzz here, the brows. Everything is pretty much ready for us to work with. One thing we can see in the channel box, you can just hide the controls if you need to do that. That you can hide the joints, controls, all this stuff. So this is pretty much the asset we have right here. And before we start rendering, what I want to do is go to the file, optimize scene size, and then here at the bottom there is unknown nodes, and I just want to tick that and optimize this, which will actually get rid of all the unknown nodes which are in the scene. And once that is done, I will just hit file save as, and I will save this under digital asset Louise. Let's just call this rig. So this is kind of now what I'm be saving this under. And this will also go onto the live stream. And also, if you want to get the shaders in the end and all that, you can sign up for this Patreon tier where you will get all the source files and all that stuff. And it will obviously not be just for this scene. It's like all the tutorials I've been uploaded so far will actually be on there. All right, so what I always like to do is see if there's first of all, open the hypershade. I have them here in my tab, so I don't need to reopen all this stuff all the time. It's pretty much just there. Let's just reorganize them. These nodes are all over the place. Not sure why actually. All right, so we have a mask ramp and we have a Lambert shader. So we don't have that much going on actually. So what I always like to do, just for now, I'm just hiding the hair using the display layer on the right here. This is my head, and this is kind of how I start working. I select my main groups, look where they are in the outliner, and then I'm just going from there. You can see there she's got some teeth, some gums, some eyes and cornea and all that stuff. So my first thing what I want to do is maybe let's just start working with the eye, and I try to be a bit faster than usual just because it's a live session and I don't want to bore you guys with all these setups things. So let's just hide the face. We want to hide the teeth, the eyes, like that. Okay. So this is pretty much the eye itself, and there's the pupil inside of this. So this is pretty much a basic setup and a physical model or anatomically correct model where you have the sclera on the outside, the lens here, and then the pupil on the inside. So this is pretty much a standard setup. And we have like this cornea mask RAM, which I'm not sure if we can use that. It just depends on the UV setup here. So let's actually see how they are. So the UVs are not perfect because they are not centered. So we would need to offset them to actually get the front for this, if we want to do that based on a texture, based on a procedural. But I think we want to go for a texture approach because we have all that. All right, so let's just start with all that. So before, oh, actually I wanted to show you the textures too. So this is actually a production ready asset. So we've got super high res scans. This is the diffuse. Then we have, I think this is the occlusion map. This is our cavity map, displacement maps, and our specular and normal maps. So we will not be using all of those. Most of the time we will be just using displacement actually and the diffuse albedo. And I'm pretty sure that we will get a pretty good result with all that just alone. So what we do now is we just create a new tab in the hypershade, call this, let's say just call this capital I for the eye shader. We go to the heading tab, surface shader. Oh, by the way, just that you guys know, I'm using Arnold 3.3 with the latest core version 5.400. And I will be renaming the shader to Sclera. Like that. Sclera, I might have misspelled this. Sclera, no, I think it's right. All right, so, and then on my left here, I have the Arnold render view loaded. Sometimes I work in the viewport, sometimes I work like that. So it's definitely up to you how you want to set up your scenes. I like to load my default presets here. Global, good portrait settings. And all right, so I'm just hitting save one more time, and I will be saving quite frequently, and I hope obviously that it will not crash, so that's why I'm keep saving. And the scene is a bit larger, so it takes a bit of time every time I save it. So I just had to drink something. I'm already talking too much here. All right, so let's just hit play and see actually what we get here. So no lights in the scene, which is totally legit. Progressive refinement on. Let's just change our mode to basic, and we can see we have a pretty nice interactive playback here. We have the portrait mode, so let's just hide the render tiles for now. We don't see them, so pretty snappy. And we can also do maybe 50% for now, so we have a really fast, interactive, almost real-time rendering going on. All right, so selecting Sclera, assigning the shader, and now let's just first step is obviously to bring in the textures. So I will just be opening the folder which I just downloaded, and we find the base textures and the data pack textures. It's sorted pretty nicely. We've got the Sclera shader right there, and I can actually open this up before we plug it into the shading stream. And you can see this is how the Sclera looks. Not too fancy, really basic. You can see it's the proper UV alignment. We can load in the iris mask, which is just this fall-off map. We have veins, which look like this, and we will be using all of this. So let's just select the ones we want to use. So I think we will just go, let's actually see how the displacement looks. I'm not sure how, why I didn't see that before. Oh, this is just like a modulation of some kind of bumpiness. So let's load diffuse, displacement, the mask. We want veins, and I think that's enough for now. Let's just drop them into the hypershade, which creates us these nice read nodes already. So we can actually just get going with that, which is pretty great. So hitting a sorting key right there, moving it over. And we still have the render going on, so maybe I just stop this for now. And let's just first plug the color into our, I will be working with a scatter shader. The eye is made out of kind of flash stuff, so it will definitely transmit some light. So let's just plug this into our subsurface color. And before even rendering, let's just also create our displacement. So I will just be creating a displacement shader and making sure I'm just deleting the shading engine which comes with it, selecting the red channel just for illuminance, and plug that into the displacement shader like that. So now that is set up, and now we have still little veins to cover, which will be kind of controlled together with the diffuse, and we have the mask which we will plug into as well. So let me just show you what we get. And actually, before we do anything, let's just load in a light. Let's load in a skydome, which is an HDRI. Head over to color, file node, choose a HDRI. Just do that off screen fairly quickly. Let's see where it is. It's a 2K studio setup. Nothing too crazy. Like that. And we should see some textures, I think. Or maybe not. Well, whatever, we don't need textures for now. All right, so that is connected. Let's just move this over and we can just hide this. There we go. And this one too. All right, so let's actually see what we get. If I hit render, we get these maps in here. That's perfect. We can change to shaded mode. And we can see that the right eye has some shader connected. If I change my colors, you can see that everything is updating as we speak, which is perfect. All right, let's go. Now we just connect the fuse is actually already connected. So head over to Subsurface, bring in this weight. So now we have the scatter shader and we can see that we get the color fall off. One thing to note is on the website, they said that every texture they give is in linear color space. So that's something you got to keep in mind, that you make sure that your colors are right. Aces CG, if you did not set it up as aces and you have your OCIO set up for OIO, then it will default to aces CG, which in turn is a raw color space, which means it should be working just fine. If you don't have all these things, but just make sure this is set to linear. I think it's, I don't have it here, but it will be called raw linear or something like that. And this is pretty much it. So we just need to change our radius, like a pretty small number. So just that we don't get, because the scene scale is a bit small, I think, or this should just be a bit smaller. That's just because the eye will not be that absorbing the light that much. And make sure you're on random walk 2, which is the new, more detailed mode. And the next step, what I was talking about, is the mask here. And for now, let's just plug this into the ID slots at the bottom, just that we can visualize them. If I hit the isolate selected, and the iris mask should be just this kind of thing. It's nothing too special. It's just a black and white mask, and we want to use that to drive the transmission, right? Pretty basic stuff. So I will just select the red, and I'm hooking this up to transmission because the front of the eye is actually a lens, which is glass, so it should be see-through. And you can see now, just by doing that, we can now look through this and we see the iris behind all that. One thing to keep in mind is that if you have the roughness, it will actually change the transmission roughness and everything. It will get super blurry. So make sure that you set the roughness to 0 for very crispy refractions. Set the IOR to glass or something similar. And then right now we don't have any specks anymore on the outside. Or we actually want to have some kind of roughness to this and not a perfect mirror-like finish like roughness 0. So what I want to do, I just want to disable the spec altogether like that. And then instead what I want to do, I will go to the code and I will just enable the code with a roughness. So now I can control the roughness independent from the transmission roughness. So this is kind of a neat little trick which we use all the time, which you can obviously make use of as well. It depends if you want to or not, but this is a pretty cool workflow. So now we have the see-through iris, and the next step would be to maybe let's bring in some veins. So if I hooked up the veins to my ID slots here, let's try that again, like that. And if I do isolate selected again and I select that, you can see that we just get a kind of a veins map, and we just want to use that to bring in some more color for the diffuse. Typically what I do, I use a color correct because the color correct has a mask input, which is super handy. So I will just create an AI color correct node like that, and pretty basic stuff. I'm just hooking up my color from my diffuse and the red channel from the veins into my mask, and the result of that will just hook up to the subsurface color. By default, if you didn't change anything, you will not see any difference at all. But now let's multiply it with some kind of yellow or let's say maybe a red color. So now you can see we introduced those veins, and obviously you can desaturate it a bit and maybe hue shifted something to a bit more orange looking or a bit darker, whatever you want, just to make them a bit more pop. And try to rename your nodes. It's always helpful. I keep forgetting that too, but it's just easier to read, especially if other people will see your scenes or you work with your scenes. This will typically help by quite a lot. So let me know if this all makes sense, and if this is maybe too fast or too slow, please let me know in the chat so I can definitely know that everything is working well or not so well, if I need to change a few things. So as I said, this stream will be hosted after this session. And you can obviously look through this in more time or more detail, whatever. So we have the displacement map already connected. So you can see there's some kind of bumpiness to all of this. And we can also, if I go into the isolated mode, you can see, or you should be able to see, that there is some values in here. Displacement shader defaults to a 0 value of 0, which means whatever is 0 will not be extruded or pushed in. So pretty much basic stuff. If you want to increase this, you can totally push the scale to get more details on it, and you can see that the iris is kind of bumping, and there's definitely detail in it. So next up is hooking up the veins to the displacement, which is also something we'd like to do, just to get some bumps into that. So what we can just do, we want to extrude this. So all we do the same thing, AI color correct, as we did on the top. There's different ways of doing this, but I'll just do this way. So I'm hooking up the color. Same way, I'm connecting the red of the mask of the veins to the mask. And I'm just really adding a super light value of maybe, I don't know, super light value of, I don't know, maybe 0.01. And we just need to see how this looks. If I hook up the red channel now to the displacement, let's see what we get. Like that. Let's see if we can. Yeah, we definitely see some spec breakup there for sure. So I think this maybe 0.1 was good enough. We can see them. I mean, here we might push them, but I think for now it's pretty much good what we do or what we have. Okay. All right. So that's the eye again. Yeah, and you can see there's some nice breakup going on. Pretty cool. It might be overall a bit too bright, but for now I think this is pretty good. What you can do in the render settings, which I tend to do for final renders, I go to the advanced tab and I make sure that use auto bump and SSS, which just really helps, especially in skin detail, push out all the detail you need. That's really helpful. It takes longer to render, but it's totally worth it. All right, so this was now the setup for the sclera. We will be now jumping to the iris, which is pretty basic. It's pretty much just a texture assignment, and just make sure there's no specular stuff going on, because the eye is it's super fibery, almost like hair, super rough and super displaced. So there's no need for specular, and it will look kind of weird if there is specular. So let's just, for now, select the iris through this here. Or maybe actually let's hide the sclera for now. Create a new standard surface shader. Like that. Assign this. Make sure you rename it properly. So this will be iris. And in the meantime, we will also create a flat shader, which will be used for the pupil. And the pupil is actually a hole in the iris, where the light passes through. And it's just black. So it's like a black hole. There's nothing, no light reflecting, no light transmitting. Everything is just a black hole pretty much. So what I'm doing, I'm just selecting the faces here, increasing my selections like that. And I'm just assigning this to the face set of the pupil there. And let me just do the same thing on this side quickly. So just we have this done. So selecting the faces, increasing, I think like that. And I'm just assigning that as well. All right, so the rest should be on Oh, I hope I did it now correct. Yeah, I forgot obviously to do it now on the other one. So sorry, let's just do that quickly again. Assign the iris and vertex mode to faces like that. And I just wanted actually to show you the whole setup, because like I often get the comment that, oh, you already are so advanced in the scene setup, I don't know where I'm going with this. So I just start from scratch so everyone sees how it's coming along. So this is now my geometry for the iris. I didn't load in the textures yet, so let's just do that. Heading over to my download folder, iris in here. So all I need is diffuse, displacement, and I don't care about the rest for now. So I'm just dropping these guys in, moving it over, and I'm creating a displacement shader like that, deleting this guy, and I am now hooking up the red channel from the map into the displacement. Displacement goes into the shading engine, and my texture, we will not use scattering for this just because we don't need to, goes into the base color. Make sure your weight is on 1. Make sure disable the specular component, and make sure that you subdivide the iris. So what I like to do, instead of always going through this and clicking until you do the subdivision settings, what I like to do is I'm just creating a quick selection set like that. I call this Arnold overrides or something like that. Overrides. And is it not here now? There, okay. And then under the Arnold tab, you can actually add an override, which is, why is that not here? Oh, because I need to select the object, I think. I'm not sure why this is empty now. Oh, I think because there's nothing in it. All right, so let's just go to the iris here and just drag that into the Arnold overrides like that. And now it knows what to add, and there should be a AI subdiv or something like that, subdiv type, and there should be subdiv iterations. Just add these two guys, and if you change this now to cat clock and maybe 2 subdivisions, everything what is in this selection set will get 2 subdivisions. And I don't need to do this per shape. It's a kind of a selection set. Whatever is in there will get this kind of treatment, which is super handy to do. Yeah, so this is a neat little trick which you can apply. And let's just see if I hit play what we get. So we get this really dark brown color. Let's first head over to basic and first to wireframe actually. So this is now what we have on 2 subdivs. Let's just actually see if it does update. I'm not just sure if this updated it now. Yeah, it does actually. So there you can see now we have the high subdivision here. And for the iris, let's just really push the displacement. So this is now on a scale of 1. Let's just maybe try 3, and you can see now we get a lot more detail in this. If you disable auto bump, you can see now we really get some nice fiber looking geometry here. And if I have the auto bump on, it's very nice detail for sure. So if I go back to shading mode, we should see the dark brown iris here. It's on ACCG, which is the correct color. If you find this is too dark, you can definitely do a color correct node like that, hook it up into input, and the out color goes to the base color. And you can just maybe do 1 stop up or something, maybe 2 stops. You can also increase the gamma a bit, 1.4. You can see there's actually some highlight captured, which is not ideal, but it's in there now. So we will dial this in a bit once we get something working here. Looks like our iris shader or pupil shader is not picking up. So I think we might need to do this again, unfortunately. So let's just stop the render quickly. I'm not sure why this didn't pick it up now. Let's just quickly see if it's there. Yeah, it looks, no, is it? Yeah, it looks like it is assigned. Interesting. I'm not sure why the pupil is now not working as expected. It is assigned here and assigned there. It might be the displacement acting up. I'm not sure. So disable this. Oh, I know. I think I know. Yeah. Stupid me. All right. I just had a wrong color, so I was panicking here a bit. I'm not sure if you noticed based on my voice, but I did just panic a bit. But all good. So let's just unhide this scleras here. And now let's see what we get when the texture is loaded up. The left does not have our little assignment yet, so the left sclera needs to get a selection for, where is it? Up here. Like that. Okay, so now we have both eyes. They look a bit very saturated, but we can totally do that. We can tweak it later. So next up is we have the wetness stuff, which is the tear lines, I'd call them. There's fancy names like Lacrimal, I think, for this little juicy flesh part. For the eye wetness, I'm just creating a little quick shader. You might have guessed it will be a water shader. Really, really basic stuff. And this is typically the process I go through. So I hide everything, and then I'm unhiding and working on these things, and then I'm jumping to the next one. That's one way of doing it. Sometimes I actually also go the other way. I hide, show everything, and then I hide the finished Lookdev stuff. So that's totally up to you. I'm just setting up the glass shader. I know how to set it up, so I don't need to render to test. So we want a roughness of 0.05, water is 1.33 pretty much, transmission on, and this is a super basic water shader. With the new Arnold, the opaque switch is turned off automatically, which is perfect. So we don't need to worry about that. And next up would be the Lacrimal. Let's just create a surface shader. I actually should create a hotkey for generating this surface shader because I do that so often. Would just save my butt. Anyway, so heading over to my little, to this guy where my textures are. Going up to Lacrimal. It sounds super weird, but I think for this we might just use the fuzz and displacement. We don't care about the transmission. All this stuff is maybe a bit too much. Some of these textures are actually also made for real-time stuff like cavity and occlusion maps. You don't typically need those in the VFX world just because you can just occlusion and all that is calculated on the fly for you. So displacement shader, delete shading engine. And in the meantime, while I'm setting this up, you might wonder why I'm not using the roughness maps or all this stuff. And nowadays, computers are so advanced or performant that we don't really need roughness maps, or not quite a lot of those. Just because we use displacement maps now, we subdivide the mesh, we render it and displace it, and this will generate us our typically built-in roughness maps on the fly. So I will elaborate this a bit more once we get into the skin shading. But typically, I try not to use roughness maps. Sometimes I do, but most times I do not, just because it's an estimation of how the skin is, and it's pretty hard-coded if you once plug in a roughness map. Pretty much everything is driven by displacement. If you stretch your face, displacement is changing the surface properties, and everything gets smoother, so more shiny, stuff like that. But as I said, I will elaborate on this a bit later. Random walk 2 is pretty nice. Scale, reduce that maybe by 0.1. And now we have the Lacrimal, the tear lines, the sclera, the iris, and the pupil. And just to get everything in line, I will just unhide the skin. Unhide the skin. And I'll just assign a surface shader to her, to Louise. That's her name. I think that's actually the real person's name as well, but I'm not so sure, but I think so. So AI skin, and we just do a typical 0.18, which is grayscale, like a neutralized grayscale value. It's 18% gray. That's what you hear pretty often. 0.6 roughness, IOR, yeah, whatever. So now we want to first add the sclera, the wetness, the lacrima, all these guys into our overrides. So all of those get subdivided. Let's just do the skin as well, then we don't need to do that later, like that. So now everything should be subdivided a lot more. Let's just change the focal length. I like having a 105 for my people or person portraits. And once we save, we will head over to the render of the, well, first look at the eyes and then jump to the skin. So I just keep drinking water here. I hope that's not too annoying, the sounds. I'm actually super sensitive about sounds, especially at work when people around you eat chips and all that and super loud. I tend to just put on my noise cancelling headphones and listen to loud music. So yeah, anyways. So let's just hit play. All right, so now we have the eyes in place. We've got the tear lines. Oh, we didn't assign the textures yet for the eye, for the lacrima. So you can see everything sits pretty nicely in the eye socket. So let's set up the lacrima. I'm not sure why. I think because I don't have subsurface on. I do have it on. Let's see. Maybe it's not assigned. Pretty much that's what it is. All right, so lacrima is connected. You can see the nice bounce going off. You can see just plug and play. I pretty much know the shader, the surface shader pretty well. So I'm very familiar with all those parameters. On default, the scale of 1 is too much for this kind of stuff, especially if you don't set any radius, which I actually did not set in the previous ones either. So what I typically do, actually, let's just do that quickly. What I typically do, I click on this little three lines here, which is a preset. And then I go to skin 1, which actually loads me the physically measured distance, wavelength distance for skin, which in RGB space, oops, like this, looks like that. And what that tells us is that the red channel travels 3.6 units, the green wavelength travels 1.3 units, and blue 0.6. And this is pretty much a measured value, which I tend to use. So I always first set up the preset, and then I hook up my diffuse color like that, and then I just play with the scale. So I think I'd 0.01 like that, and you can actually now see how the blood is actually being absorbed a lot better. The eye does not have that much blood, so I didn't bother doing that, but we definitely should not have a fully white. It just looks too white, I would say. So let's just head over to the sclera shader, which is all the way up there, and make sure that we just do, let's just use the same color actually, and change our radius based on that to 0.01 as well. And now you can see it's a lot more pinkish, more yellowish, which is a bit better than we had before. And once we get the skin in, this should not look as bad as it is right now. And if you're curious about the wireframe, because I've seen in the chat that super high-res iris, let's see what we have right now. You can see this is now currently our subdivision. And honestly, I think for the skin, it is not dense enough if you want to see all those nice details. So instead of, I'm not actually not sure if I change it here, what will override it. We can check that. I think actually that the selection sets do override this. Let's just try. Yeah, so no change in that. So I think selection sets do override this. So what we can do, obviously we cannot do it per object. What you can do though is you could subdivide based on edge length, which would be actually a clever way to not over subdivide things like the eye, for instance, which is already, you can see it's super dense. So let's just maybe do 1 here. And maybe before we do anything, let's just do the edge length thing. So we're just adding subdiv, let's see if I can find it, subdiv derivative and pixel error, I think. no, not smooth derivative. What else? Base metrics. Yeah. So we can do edge length, and this is now the pixel error. So we can just say, okay, let's just first go really high, like 5. It's pretty high value for pixel error. And let's just do 5 subdivisions. And I think, hopefully, let's just start with 3 first. And this should now not subdivide that much. Or it should pretty much subdivide everything pretty much in the same fashion. If I go up to 15, you can see it's not subdividing as much as well. The closer I get, if I re-render, we should get a different subdivision. Yeah, you can see it updated a bit. So now you can dial in the pixel error, update. And depending how far you adjust this, at some point your meshes will subdivide more and more and more. And you can see now that's what's actually happening. Based on camera distance, stuff will subdivide more. If I go closer to the nose, and I restart the render, we should get a different subdivision. And you can see a thing in the back here, that's pretty much what happened. You can see now based on the frustum, this is what happened. But yeah, so back to shaded mode. Let's just bring actually some skin, some shininess back to her, so she's not that dry looking. All right, so this is now our basic setup. And let's just have a look at those masks or textures actually. I'm just reading quickly. Distinct materials, what's the best way to export information to the packages? Well, you could export the whole the AS file, which has all that information in it. And that's, I think, typically what you would need to do is export the AS file to export these settings, or you can set attributes which might come through Alembics if you need to read that. Then I haven't done that actually myself, so I wouldn't really know how to set this stuff up. So let's head over to the head texture. So we have an unlit and a lit. So let's look at let's look at these guys, what's happening. So this is the diffuse, I'd say the lit version. Let's load in the unlit version. It's just kind of removing the specks, or it's kind of a paint out of the light information, the light baked in light, which is great, but you need a pretty much flat lit surface to work with. And then we have, I showed them before, we have displacements and all that. So heading over to the hypershade, let me just drop in those textures. So I think we can work with cavity to maybe get some extra detail. Load in the diffuse unlit, head displacement for sure. And I'm not 100% sure if, let me just bring them in and then we can see. Gloss and spec, they are pretty much the same. Different packages have different names or naming conventions, or real-time engines have different conventions. So let's just load all these guys in, sort them, and move this guy over so we have it a bit easier to connect. First of all, let's connect the displacement. Random walk 1 SSS. Yeah, this can pretty much be done. The random walk in general is just a very good algorithm. So if the V2 is just a bit more detailed, there's honestly not too much difference to the naked eye. Like you really need to get close to see stuff, but especially on thin edges or thin objects, it really shines, the random walk too. It's just like Arnold's scattering is just really gorgeous actually. All right, so displacement shader hooked up. Actually, if you press 1, 2, 3, 4 on those nodes, you can have different types of connections. And if you don't see the same layout on your end, you can actually right-click them and do edit custom list. And you can drag all these attributes you have at the bottom up in the top. And then you can have the kind of the same layout. And let me plug in the diffuse unlit to my subsurface color. And cavity and the other one will go into the ID slots just for visualization. And oh yeah, one quick thing to say, like for the scattering, like we used to have a epidermal, subdermal, and the other one, I don't know, a 3-layer setup for scattering And this was just an estimation for the renderer to know better what to do and how to treat different wavelengths. But typically what you do by setting up the subsurface presets here, like by doing the skin 1, for instance, like these measured values, this is pretty much the layers you have. So the red travels the deepest, green, and then blue. This is pretty much how skin is set up. And this is just what we will be using. So you can definitely use the unlit one and grade it a bit more red, but essentially this suffices for a good looking skin. So let's just hook this guy up. We've got the scale. Let's go 0.1 scale. And subdivision is on. Displacement is connected. Let's just save, and then we connect this. Yeah, Riz as well. I work with PRMan all the time at work. They have pretty good scatter shaders, but I think they still need to work a bit more to get this nice detailed looking skin shading. It works super well. I'm not sure if everyone has seen Toy Story. It's very nice. There's lots of scattering going on, and it works super well. So they can definitely do that, and yeah, it's definitely doable with PRMan for sure. So this is now the skin hooked up, and you can see it takes a bit longer to render. But before we dial in the skin shader, let's just go to the basic mode, and this is how I work typically as well. Let's just jump to wireframe, see what we get here. So this is our wired mesh. It looks weird, but it's totally fine. It's not broken or anything. It's just because we're using the edge length to display, so no problem at all. All right, so basic mode. So let's just see what we get if we really change our render settings maybe to 200%, update the render, and see what we get. It takes a bit more subdivision time. You can see that the eyes, the bumps on the eye is working well. And we definitely have some really great detail on the skin here. But I think we should push it a bit more. This eye looks a bit weird, maybe a bit broken, but I think that's just a displacement issue, but we'll see in a bit. So let's just focus here on that little skin patch at the bottom. Like that. And let's just work with the displacement. So what I like to do, it's a zero-based displacement map, so let's go maybe 1.5. And now you can already see that we get a lot more detail. Disabling auto bump, we can see that we have some subdivisions going on, but it might not be enough, I think. So let's just go back to shaded mode and update full scene and see if we get more detail now based on the closer distance to the object. But I think it's pretty much the same. So heading over to the Arnold overrides, let's just change this to 4 subdivisions and update and see. I think we got a lot more detail now actually. Wireframe, yeah, it's a lot more dense, and we should see definitely more detail. And now we can bring back the displacement, the auto bump, just to get this extra detail in here. And this is now a pretty well done map. Now let's look at the cavity map actually, and see what that looks. So that's a cavity map. It's you can see it's very coarse and very detailed. And let's look at the roughness map, which is pretty much, you can see it's very diffuse and blurred out. It's almost like I would not like to use that just because of the lack of detail in this. So, but I like to use the cavity map. And what I want to do with that, I want to use that to kind of play around with the displacement with this kind of color. So this map is, I think the blacks are 0. Yeah. So all we can do now, we can actually multiply this. Now let's think. If we offset, we can just maybe use this as a little, we just add this together with the other map or mix it in really low. But before we do that, I just want to offset it so that we just have the black should go inside. So what we can do is just use a subtract, I think. Or we can do an offset. Let's just see if there's an AI subtract. And we want the cavity map in the input 1. Hook this up. And let's see, now we didn't change anything. So all I want to do is I want to subtract maybe a really low value based on this. Let's just do a value like that. So now we should be having negative values in those areas here. Yeah, minus, I think so. Let's just see if I think they're supposed to be minus. Yeah, minus 0.008. So let's just go a bit further maybe. Like that. So now we have pores and we have bumps. So what I want to do now with this kind of thing is I just do a mix, or is there actually a composite, or actually I think there's a layer shader, layer RGBA. I think this is a default Arnold one. And what I want to do, I just hook up the color. I keep mixing them up a bit, but we just see if I get it right the first time. So color 1, color 2, hook it up and see the result. So I think this is showing our displacement map here, which it is. And now if I enable layer 2 and I mix, yeah, so I'm just, if I remove the mixer 1, this is the bottom one. And if I just go down slightly, 0.95, we're just blending the other map in slightly like that. And this, you can see if I go back to 1, and I actually, you can see how much more detail we get by this, right? So maybe 0.98. Yeah, this should be enough just to get a bit more detail in this map. So let's just use this now instead for our displacement, like that. So, and you can see how much time I'm spending on just the displacement alone. And it's super important that you do, because the micro surface is really giving you that look you need. So the skin is like reflecting so much or not so much because there's like super dense structure on the surface. And this is kind of defining how shiny the skin is. If you have oil, if you're sweaty, these little micro dents and micro roughness, they will just get filled with sweat or liquid or some oil which your skin produces, and that's why you look a lot more shiny. Yeah, so now this is hooked up, so let's just hit play. Disable this mode, go to basic, remove our exposure, and now you can see that everything looks like a lot more detailed. Like it definitely looks too much with this viewing mode, and you can see that we have the eyebrows, and we definitely need to get rid of this. And this is some modeling seam, but we don't care that much for this right now. We just care about the head, I think, and about this detail. So let's just go in the front view like that, and reduce our test resolution back to 100 maybe, so we don't go overboard with my little computer here. And head over to lighting mode, which is pretty front lit right now. And I think we actually have a render cam. Yeah, let's just render from the render cam, so I can freely work with the perspective camera like that. Okay, so you can see it's pretty front lit, 2 big lights in the front, and I just want to have some more interesting side lighting just to get some shapes in here. All right, so now you can see it's pretty much side lit like that. We have really soft lighting, and I just want to raise the light. Like I'm just rotating these lights up a bit so they come more from the top. So our shadows are pointing downwards like that. And I think if I change my render settings now, let's just go maybe to, let's just first change the samples in the light. Okay, and then we go maybe on 6 AA samples, and we just go on 3 SSS, which we'll be using some more. Okay, we can see the pores, so let's just switch to shaded mode, and everything looks super red right now without changing anything. And this is definitely because I didn't tweak it yet. So what I'm doing right now, I just plugged in that map, and we didn't play around with the values yet. So it's still noisy just because we are not refined yet. But what I tend to do now, if I work with skin, I'm disabling progressive refinement, and in the render settings, I am enabling progressive render, which is slowly getting cleaner and cleaner and cleaner, so I get faster feedback. So this is typically my workflow. So yeah, you can see the scale is far off, and I know that because I'm seeing way too much red here, right? It's super color bleedy and it just looks waxy, like it's a different material. So let's just play down the scale, 0.05, and let's first actually go on 0. So this is now without any scattering, right? You can see this looks almost like a plastic shell. There's no blood in it. It's super basic. So let's try maybe 0.005 and see what we get. You can see there's some slight color variations on the edges here. It's a bit too diffuse, still a bit too plasticky. So let's go on 0.01. And slowly you can see it feels definitely more flashy. There's some blood in these thin areas. Let's see the little dent here on the lips. It's still not perfect yet. I think it's still a bit too plasticky, so go maybe 0.02. And now we can see we get some nice coloring on the top edge of the lips. I'm not sure how good the stream is, what the quality is, but I hope it's good enough that you can see the detail I'm looking at here. So it's hard to, like, I cannot do full pixel renders right now just because of the stream and the quality, but I just wanted to show you kind of the color which we have, and then I just show a smaller view. And I'm pretty much happy with this. We can push it a bit more maybe, especially here on the nose and eye area. So let's just go maybe 0.25, and for now just be done with that. And the next step is the roughness. As I said just now, that we don't really change the roughness values. They are driven by the displacement map pretty much. So what I mean by that, let's just disable the scattering for now. Make her skin black. So this is currently our specular response map. And you can see based on the displacement, we get stronger and less strong reflections. Here on the cheeks, it's super spread out, but on the nose, it's super sharp. And as I said, this is driven by displacement maps. So if nowadays in production, like especially for the Hulk or something like that, we have ICT scans and blend shapes, and everything is pretty much recorded from the actor. So when he opens his mouth, the skin stretches, so you get a different blend shape map or ICT scan from that, which is then in turn blended with the rest of the shader. So obviously we don't have this here. We don't have a displacement map for each shape, so we don't have the stretching. But if you would want to do that properly, you would do it that way. And if you don't have that, obviously you can use roughness maps and all that fancy stuff. But it's definitely, if you work in production, this is kind of what you can expect. So the only thing I tend to do is slightly adjust the roughness based on the sweatiness or not sweatiness I want. And if I want to control, what I tend to do, I get over to Mari. Let's just first change the color back, actually. Looks a bit freaky like that. All right, so I tend to go to Mari, and what I do there is I paint mattes, area masks, for you can call it. So for instance, I paint a map for the T-zone. I paint a map for the nose tip. I paint a map for the cheeks, for the lips. All these little areas with soft fall-offs. And then what I can do, I use a color correct node the same way as we do for the displacements in the eye, for instance, where we do the veins. I connect my area mask, which I painted in Mari, and plug that into my roughness. And then I have separate control, for instance, for the cheekbone, the cheeks, the nose, the eyes, whatever. So this is some work you would need to do to get this control if you really want to fine tune this. And this is, maybe we can do that actually today, so we will see. Live stream is on now for an hour, so I plan to do 2 hours, so we have one more to go. So let's just get going. So the first thing what I want to do in Mari is actually paint out the eyebrows, because I actually have eyebrows from XGen. So we didn't even do the hair shading yet, but we will definitely jump into that in a bit. So I've seen that we need to paint out a few maps for the eyebrows. I think it's displacement, it's cavity, and definitely the diffuse. So let's just see. We head over to Mari. I have that open already. We have a new archive. So now I'm just loading in the geometry path. I'm just going to hook it up off screen quickly. It's a live session. Digital Louise. Like here. I think it's supposed to be. I hope it's this. I didn't actually check it beforehand, but let's just go with this. And we just want, I think we just want Louise like that. I hope this is correct. Let's just see if I bring that in. Let's see what we get. And what we will be doing now, we'll be just importing those maps, and then we just adjust them and like paint out the hair, so and paint out the foreheads and all that stuff. So just to see that we have clean textures. The question is if my preference are feet or centimeters. So I'm definitely using centimeter scale. So typically for the random walk, it feels like it's off by almost 100th. So I just divide that by 0.1 or 0.01, stuff like that. So I'm just playing until I get the look right. Depends on scene scale. If the object is actually in centimeters or in meters, then it's a totally different thing. So just keep that in mind for sure. If you work in the correct resolution and in correct settings. I'm just waiting for Mari to load in the mesh, which seems a bit heavy. Might take a bit of time. So I think the mesh is slowly trickling in here, and I hope it's actually the correct one. We will see once it's loaded up fully. Mesh, I think this was the right one. I think it's still importing a bit of time. Let's see. And yeah, so I think we can definitely, once we get the maps painted out, you can see the eye is a bit too red, but this is also really strong lit now from the back and from the side, so this might be well in this situation. I definitely think she's looking way too sweaty, so we will change the roughness maybe to something like 0.4 or something like that, just to get that in line. All right, so this is now in Mari. We have her in the scene, and what I want to do now, I just want to create a new channel, or I just let's just right click the base color here and import into current channel, and then I will just be going to the diffuse texture which we had before. So I'm just jumping to the folder fairly quickly off screen, and then I'll be back once I found it. All right, so back here, textures. So in here we have the head, and we have the, actually I did the paint over already, but I just don't want to show this. I just want to show you how to do this. So I'm just loading in the unlit EXR file, import. I hope I did it right. So this should load it in. Takes a bit of time. We are in 4K texture resolution, 16-bit, and it looks like it did not do as it's supposed to do it. And because we, weirdly enough, loaded in the wrong UVs, which is super weird. Let's just check if the object is correct. I'm not sure why it didn't load the, so this is the right one. Okay, let's just check this again. Let's see. I might need to re-import the texture. And if all is not working, then we'll be just using the existing one. But I would love to show you quickly the paint over. So let's just go to the channel again and try to re-import that. Yeah, import all patches. Let's see. Maybe I just need to import the single patch then. No, there we go. Okay. So now this is loaded. We can maybe rename this to diffuse. and then I will load in the other ones as well. So import into current channel. We want the cavity map, which I had been using, which is this. I think if we just click here, we just need to change. I'm not so familiar in Mari, unfortunately, but it should be current channel. So this is diffuse cavity map. I'm not sure why we don't see that detail. We'll see in a bit. And then the specular, let's just rename this to displacement. And let's just import that. Import into current channel. And let's see if we can do that. Yeah, so the displacement worked just fine. I'm not sure why the cavity didn't work as well. Let's just try this again by right-click, import into current channel. Cavity map. Let's see if this does it now. Or maybe this is correct. I'm not so sure. It doesn't look correct, but let's just first work on the other ones. So let's just go to the diffuse one. And I have now my Wacom tablet in my hand. So let's just go to the brow here. And let's just see if we can actually paint this out. So I like to draw in the UV space. It's just a bit easier. Like that. And then we just go to the brushes, into the clone stamp. And then we can pretty much create a new layer. I think we are on layer 1 here. Yeah. And I just want to create a new layer, and my picker should be coming in from, oh, so many layers here. So it should come from Louise diffuse layer, which is the second one right there. So if I now control click, I have my target, and now I can just draw on top here. With different pressure, I can set this up. So before we get going, I just want to make sure that I'm actually just lighting it up. So I can light in and do lighting. So now it should just be affecting or making the eyebrows brighter, and not more than that. So hopefully this will work without crashing on me. It looks like a crash. I hope not. And we'll see. I haven't worked with Substance Painter that much yet. It's just different software, which I know it's getting better and better. It now has full UDIM support, so it's definitely interesting to work with that right now. And I think I will be jumping on that in some bit of time. And just by switching over to Maya again, I can feel that it's too saturated. So I will definitely be changing the saturation a bit. So if we can actually do this, maybe it will come back. We'll see. Doesn't look good on the Mari side. So before we continue on Mari, let's just do a AI color correct node here and hook up the diffuse color like that and plug it into the subsurface color. And as I said, it feels way too saturated, so I just hit the play button. So we're back here, and I'm just heading to the color correct and then just desaturating a bit, maybe 0.9. And you can already see just by doing that, the skin got a lot whiter. And I think it feels just a bit more natural. It's not too bloody or brownish. So maybe 0.9 was a bit much, but we can evaluate this a bit later. And in the meantime, let's just head over to the roughness. As I said, let's just try maybe 0.4. See if this works a bit better. And I think it does. Like it feels a bit softer. It's not too shiny anymore, and I think we have a nice skin looking shader right now. So luckily Mari just came back, so let's just try this again. Yeah, you can also do this in Photoshop. That's totally a possibility, so no problems on that. So now I'm just lightly pushing on with my Wacom, and I'm just like lightly just coloring it in. I'm not going too crazy here. Not too many, like this will not be perfect as I'm just showcasing this, but you can see like I press super lightly and I do another control click on the eyelid here just to get this color in a bit better, so we have softer edges. We can also change the brush to make this a bit smoother. Which one was it? R is the radius. I think I'm not sure. There's somewhere is a brush menu, which I don't see right now. It's not the worst if I don't find it, I think. It's just maybe tool properties, brush settings. Let's see. So many options here. There must be some flow, opacity, radius. I think it's in brush settings somewhere. Yeah, it must be somewhere here. Or not. Hold K. Let's see if K does it. Ah, thank you. K is it. You see, I'm not even sure which one I want. Basic brushes, and I want, I think this one, right? Thanks for the tip. You see, super helpful. Yeah, so this is a lot softer, I think, or smoother. Or you can even do a even softer one. Let's try this guy. Anyway, so you just paint out the stuff, and obviously people are definitely better than I am and more talented in using Mari. So definitely do a better job than I'm just doing right now. And then you can totally paint this stuff out and make it work a lot better. Let's see. And you can also hit, I think it's Alt-B to bake. Not reset. Sometimes I think it's, let's see. You can paint it out just to make sure that you, it's just to bake it into the current layer. Sometimes it does it by just moving the viewport, and sometimes it messes it up. So I always just like to bake it myself, just to know that things are working. All right, so let's get over to the other side quickly. I just don't want to do it too long here. And we just maybe shift click here, control click here, and we just draw this quickly in, really subtle here. And then we're just painting out the brows, because we need to do this also on the displacement and the other map, because we will fill this in with the XGen, right? So, and we don't need to be really super perfect with this, just because we will have hair on top of this anyways. So let's just do this fairly quick again. Like that. Okay. And then before we do this final, I also want to just make a larger brush quickly and do the top of the head as well. So I'm just clicking here, and I'm just subtly painting out these hairs. Obviously, if you do it properly, you would do it a lot nicer than what I'm doing right now. And this is just for demonstration, I think. Like that. Yeah, the brows look really bad. So we might just work this a bit better. Let's go back to normal. All right, so let's just jump quickly over to the other ones, to displacement and cavity, if we have time for this. Actually, I'm not so sure. So objects, channels. Mari is a bit slow, unfortunately. Especially if you work in 4K, 8K is even worse. So it depends, obviously, on your machine setup. In the meantime, feel free to ask any questions while I'm waiting for the software to load, and also any other things. And actually, in the meantime, we can get going on this. Oh, we're back. We can start on the skin shading if we need to, on the hair shading. All right. Okay, so hitting B again, just to bake it down. We go to objects, and we go to channels. We go to displacement, which is loaded in. And now I don't see much. So what I'm doing here, I'm just boosting the, I think it's this guy, the exposure. And you can see we totally have the brows in here. So this is, I want to paint with a value of 0. I don't want to really clone this time. So what I do, I just go to the brush tool, and I think I need just do this. And if I paint now, I should paint in, let's just actually do on layer 0, do a new layer, clear the buffer, paint on here. And this allows me now to paint out the eyebrows. You can have a larger brush like that. And if I'm painting with 0, I'm just removing any displacement. Because my displacement is based on 0 value, I can just get rid of these guys. As I said, this will not be the best paint out, but it will do the trick. And we just do this on the other side too. Like that. And just painting, painting, painting. Hitting B to bake. And the problem now is with this stuff here. So what I want to do now is I'm just picking maybe maybe a color like that. Not sure if it did pick it. Maybe with the mouse. I'm not sure. It's not really allowing me to pick. Maybe like this. Yeah, this picked the color. And now I just want to make sure that my brush is on lighten like that. And then I just want to brush over these little hairs on the side here, just to try to kind of paint them out so they are not pushed out that much. Like that. Same on this side. Yeah, I don't know. This might just, it's not the best job. But anyways, so next step would be to just export these textures. So clicking here resets this, or I think it's actually, what was it on 1? Reset here. I can right click this and I can export current channel. And then I can go to named files. This is UDIM 1001. And I can just do this off screen fairly quickly. Go to the folder and save that out into my texture folder under my Maya file, and we go to source images right here, and we just call this diffuse.exr. Save it, and I hope this should do it. Did it do it? Let's just check the folder. That was fairly quick if it did it already. Let's just see. No, it did not export this. Why is there no XR support? Maybe I need to add the UDIM tag. It's possible. I'm not 100% sure. And you can already see that painting is not my real strength here. So let's just try that. Maybe we need a /. Does that? No. Do you wish to overwrite them? No. You still wanted to overwrite my original texture now. Let's see. Exporting layer, flattens. Let's just try this again, and hopefully this does it this time. And if it's breaking it, we actually have a backup, so it should not be too crazy. So let's just export all patches. Yeah, okay. So now this should do it. So 156 megabytes. And it was, I think, failing again. Or last try, let's see. We're so close. And we do this. Sorry for boring you. It's super frustrating, I guess. And let's just try / here. This might actually be the problem. Let's just try this again. Okay, I think this time it worked. Let's see. I'm not sure. I think we still have bad news here. Why does this not work? Export current channel flattened. Okay, I don't know. Okay, just ignore that. This is typically how you would do it. You just paint it out. You can see there's some IO issues. But anyways, let's just continue with her and keep going. Sorry for that delay. And now we're back to the, let's do the fur shading or the hair shading. Let's first start off with the peach fuzz. So opening the channel box, bringing up back the hair, and I just wanna first go to the hair group and just hide the hair, and I just want to hide the eyebrows. So this is now the eyelashes and the peach fuzz. So the peach fuzz will get the own shader. So will the peach fuzz. So lashes and peach fuzz. So we do a standard hair shader, one, and we do another one like that, and move this down. So one is lashes and one will be peach fuzz. So these are my two hair shaders for the basic hair here. And I just want to assign them. So I'm selecting the XGen fuzz and I assign that, and the same for the lashes, and I assign those. And next up, let's for now just start the render and see what we get. And it looks like we did not get the hair at all. Update full scene for this, and let's see if they come back now. It looks like it takes a bit longer. So you can totally see that there is no some hair on the side here. It's the default shader is dark, so it looks a bit weird maybe. So you can see that we definitely see the peach fuzz appearing. We can render on 200 resolution just to get really into the detail here. And you can totally see the hairs there. So the next thing is, let's just adjust the shader. So peach fuzz is pretty much transparent hair. So make sure that you have a melanin value of maybe almost 0.01 maybe. And then next step is to remove the roughness, the redness. And you can increase the roughness maybe to 0.3. And then important thing is to play with the opacity. So hair is pretty much let's light through. So you should totally do that too. So if you reduce the opacity, the hair is letting light through it. So if I go down, you can see they almost disappear, but this is the behavior you want to do. So Arnold has a new ramp shader, which is I think under utility. It's called AI ramp, and we want a color ramp. So we do AI ramp RGB. And this is now connected. I hope it's connected to the right port. It's connected to opacity, and this is correct. So if I view isolate selected and I render now through the perspective camera, and I find, where are we at? It's hard to say. We're here. So I just want to show you, if I really zoom in closely here, I just want to show you how the ramp shader works pretty much. So very close to the nose area, and I am now isolated to this area here. So in the ramp, you have the option to use implicit UVs and make it switch this to curves. And now you can see the bottom is black and the top is white. If I change my ramp, you can see that the color is moving up and down the ramp. So what we want to have is we want to have white at the base and black at the tips, which means the tip of the hair is slowly fading out, right? So this is kind of how you control it. You can have a smooth ramp or linear, but I think linear is just good enough. So what we're doing now here is we're pretty much fading off the tips. We don't want to go fully black, so let's maybe go 0.1 or something like that. And then we just create another value, which is maybe 0.01. So we have this kind of fall off here. All right, so this is setting up the ramp shader. If I go back to my render camera and I go back to the side here, we should see now the fur is, oh sorry, the fur, it's not an animal. We should see some nice fall off. Obviously this is still pixelated just because it's super fine hair, but I think it will catch the light very nicely now just by adding this this little opacity fall off. So next up is the lashes, And in my previous video, I thought they were too thick, and maybe we can work on that. So before we start rendering, what I want to do is change the thickness of these hair, of the lashes. So I go to the eyelashes. I have my XGen on the side here, and I can go to the base of this, or at the top where we have the width scale. And I just want to make sure that I'm not going too crazy. So we go maybe a width of 1. I think this is a lot better. And we can also visualize it as ribbons or as thick objects for Arnold. So let's just see what that would look like. If I start the render, let's see. So you can see now they got a lot thinner. If I go to the basic mode, you can see now this works a lot better. Not so thick, and we just need to change the shader. So right now it's fully black, so maybe go on 0.7 and reduce the redness. Maybe we go on 0.4, so this should almost be blonde now. I'm not sure. Yeah, they're slowly picking up. Let's just see if it's with this thing I just changed. I changed this to thick. Maybe go back to ribbon. Yeah, it was the thick mode. So I'm just back to ribbon, and now we see we have a lot lighter lashes, and I think I just went a bit too far now with the value I have. 0.4 is maybe a bit too much, so let's go 0.55. And what we can do, we can also play with the opacity if we need, but lashes typically are they have some kind of mascara on it or something like that, so they tend to be more opaque looking. But I think the tweak I did works very well. Will this be available? Yes, this video will be a normal video I upload to my channel. So you can opt out and watch it later if you want to, or you can stay and ask more questions if you want. So we've got the lashes, we've got the peach fuzz. So next thing is the eyebrows, and because Mario was not exporting right, we will have now the brows in a texture. Luckily, I did a paint over before, which I'll be just using for this now. So I'm just looking for that texture, and I think I have it. I hope it's this one. Yeah, let's just try it, I guess, and see if this with the new texture fits, if we don't have the brows built in. I just saved the scene quickly. I didn't save in a while. So always feel free to ask any questions in the chat. I'm monitoring that. You can see it's also in the live stream, so you can see the chat messages. All right, scene is safe. Let's hit render and see if we get the brows painted out. And they are, but you can see they are still in the displacement map. So now it looks super wonky as well. But it's better than nothing. So they're painted out. We still have the displacement and cavity, but that's okay for now. So now let's bring in the eyebrows. And the first thing I'm noticing with the brows is that I think they are intersecting a bit, which might totally be the case. So we might just need to sculpt them or displace it a bit. Let's see if we can do that by moving my windows. And let's go to the eyebrows group. And maybe I think there's some we can add a displacement modifier, and we can just move it up slightly so they are coming outside. Just a tiny bit. And we do the same for the other eyebrows. So we just add a displacement modifier, and we just really lightly push out the curves. And if you think they are too thin, you can also just change the thickness of them, which I want to do now. You can see now that's a thickness parameter. Change the other brow thickness a bit, like that. All right, so let's just, they will both get the same hair shader. So let's just create another one, AI It's called the AI hair shader. I bet you knew that. Standard hair actually. And let's just rename this guy and say brows. And let's just hook this up to both of the eyebrows. And this one will be a bit more advanced because we want to make Louise a bit older this time. And I will be generating some mutant hair or white hair. So this is now super black and super in your face brows. And we will just be changing the melanin for now. Let's just do the same as we did before, 0.55, no redness. And this is pretty much what we have. And it feels a bit too strong, honestly. It's a bit too dark, I think. Let's just do 50% and just have a look. Yeah, it's very much, very obvious that it's CG. A bit lighter brows. They might be a bit too light in terms of color. But what we can do is we can change the thickness again, which I played around with before. So maybe just go 0.2 in the brow thickness and 0.1 and just hit render again. So now they got definitely thinner, which is working a bit better. Let's just go a bit thinner one more time. Like that. And I think this should be working better. How you generate the shadow iris effect on the eye. I'm not sure what the shadow iris effect is. There's a highlight and the iris itself, or the sclera shadow, is the eye. I think that's what you're asking. I'm not 100% sure about the question. All right, so we have the brows. I think they work a lot better now. Let's just go back to the 200 render resolution so we see a bit more detail. Let's just find the eyebrow like this. All right, so what I was saying is we want to make this a bit more advanced. And if I select the eyebrow, you can see this is pretty much a shader, and I want to randomize that. By doing that, we add variation to the hair, which is which happens in real life too. So you have not always the same color on your brows or on your head hair. So I have created a probability shader. It's a super fancy word. Essentially what it's doing, it's just mixing two colors based on a chance or probability value. And to set up the shader, you need an AI utility node. And you need a AI random node. So the utility will be changed to flat, and the mode will be, I think it was a primitive ID, I think, or uniform, we'll see. And then this hooks up into input color for the random. We change this to color, and we want a grayscale output. And if I hit show all parameters on the OSL shader here, this is not a, the AI probability is not a Arnold shader. In my most recent tutorial, I am showing you how to create that. So it's really just simple shader stuff. So the input will get my random color setup here. And then the out color will actually hook into the melanin. So right now we have a melanin of 0.55. Just keep that in mind. If I hook this up, we should get something wacky, I think. If I do isolate selected on the utility, you can see that we get random colors for each first strand, and the random assigns a random value from 0 to 1 to all these all the curves. And then I have my probability, and you can see on 0.1 probability, a few of those hairs are red, and most of the bulk of this is this green. So what I said before, we want to change the color to a melanin of 0.55. No saturation, obviously. So this is what we had before. And the red, we want them to be white. So we want to have a melanin value of 0. It's hardly visible here, but it's, let's see if we actually see a difference here now. We should see white hair, We can actually see one is right there. And we can see a few ones. Once it resolves, it should be more visible. I think it's intersecting because of the displacement map I have here. That's why it's a bit penetrating into the surface. Yeah, I must agree it's not that visible. Let's just change the probability 0.5. And now you can see we get a lot more see-through white hair. And this is pretty much the effect I'm trying to go for. So a value of 0.05 should be enough. It should not be too visible what I'm trying to do here. So we have the randomize, we have the roughness. So this would be pretty much the setup for the eyebrows. And now comes a cool part where we actually come to the final hair shading. So I'm just unhiding this. And in my video, in my tutorial, I did not really much like these hairs here, which go on the top, on the head so much. So let's just actually see this time if we can just find them and maybe disable them. Let's see if we can get the selection working. Not sure why the selection is not working. Might be this. I don't know. Anyway, so let's just go one by one. So it's not this. I think it's not that. Bun under. No. Small hair straight. Yeah. So I think this was the main one, which was a bit annoying. But they have a few nice things. So we might actually just cut them. Let's see if we can do that quickly. So they are small hair straight like this. And when in here, we can just, maybe we can just groom them. It's just a density brush. I think they got imported. So I'm not sure where they are coming from really. But let's just see if we do a, what do we want actually? Sculpt, edit, and we go to generate, and we go to interactive grooming tools. We want to do a groom brush, comb brush. Yeah, so we are definitely selecting the correct ones, and we can move them. That's perfect. I guess I just want to cut those, or just actually set the density on those. So I've got my tool down here, and I just want to set them to 0. Change my brush size. Not sure why it's so large. No, I don't see the brush anymore. I'm not sure why that is. Let's just go the cut brush. Yeah, the cut brush works again. All right, so I can just maybe do a cut. Remaining length. I actually want to paint the density. I'm not sure why this is not doing what it's supposed to. Interpolate. It's unfortunate that I cannot do that right now. Maybe because it's not a sculpt and I need a density. Is that what it is? Curve to spline. Okay, anyways, instead of doing a cut, let's do a width brush, and let's just make them thinner, not like larger, like that. So I'm just making them super thin so they are not in your face as much. Let's go lower. Min width like that. Okay, and we do the same on the other side just to clean up some of those hairs here. Okay. All right, so I think this is good enough. All right, so messed around with XGen, showed how to do that, and now we're going back to Arnold render view, and we assign the hair shader, like surface standard hair, that's what it's called, this guy. And then we just select all the hair down here, and we just assign this like that. I think it's actually directly painted on this, which is the scalp. It doesn't have a different hue as far as I know. It's pretty much, it's not working because I don't have the density set up in the first place. So that's I think why. Head hair. And so now the head hair is will be a bit challenging because we don't have any painted maps right now. We might have if we have still time. We don't have much time left. So let's just start the render and see what we get actually. How to find, the question is how to find the textures, and the textures of the eyes are in the download folder if you go to the ISCO website, which I showed in the beginning of this video, which you can download everything from there. You can see that scene generation takes a lot longer now because of all the curves. But I think the render did start. Let's see. Let's just first go into test resolution 50%. And there you have it. So you have her with the black hair, which we had before. And let's just time actually render from the perspective again. And you can see her hair from the side. Let's zoom in a bit and render this area here. And maybe go on 100% test resolution. And render the smaller section. So hair definitely takes a lot longer to render just because it's super dense and there's lots of light passing through. So for her, let's just change the color of the melanin maybe to 0.55, so it's in tune with the same as the brows and lashes. And let's bring in the randomizer to 0.6 maybe. So we have some kind of randomization, and might be a bit too much. You can see it gets super brown now. But we also want to introduce the same treatment we had with the probability stuff, right? So I can actually just reuse that. Let's see. I can just create another probability shader and just hook this up into the input as we did before. Red goes into the input here. And then the color, the red channel goes to the melanin right there. And the only thing we need to do is obviously to change the color. So everything green will be a melanin of 0.55 with no saturation. And everything on A will be black with no saturation. So this is just giving us the same treatment as before, just that we have some kind of white fibers. Yeah, I think the correct term is mutant hairs. So the more you have of those, the more white or gray your hair looks. And it might be that 10% for her is a bit much. We can go a bit lower if we need to. So let's just see how this looks. And I think the hair looks a bit too metallic or a bit too wet looking. So we can also just dial that down, change the roughness slightly. You can see now we get these, like for instance, here is like a brighter hair piece. And you can see there's quite a few which are now brighter, and it looks definitely like mutant, like white gray hairs, which is pretty cool, right? So one thing which I like to show you is what I didn't show, or which I don't show that much, is how to create a ramp, like root to tip. And typically what you do is you just create a ramp, AI ramp RGB, like that. Well, it depends if you work with melanin, which is typically what human hair has. It's just a pigmentation and it's not dyed hair. You can just use this as the ramp. Typically the pigmentation does not change. It's just the exposure to the sun. So you might just want to plug this into a different slot if you want to. Let's just see. You can plug this into diffuse if you need to, which kind of adds, it looks like a dust effect almost, but typically I just mess around with the melanin. It's not 100% physically correct, but it does the trick. So how I do that, I check which one I need to control, and I need to control the B slot. So I can just hook up the ramp into the B slot like that. And if you don't want to use the probability stuff, you can just hook this directly to the melanin with the red channel. And in here, I'm changing the use implicit to curves only. So now you can see I get my root tip color variation. So my roots are black, the tips are white. So what I want to do, I want to have darker roots and lighter tips. So to get that correct right, whatever is dark is going towards 1. Whatever is that correct? Whatever goes to 1. Yeah, correct. So whatever is going to the value of 1 is black in the melanin. So let's just try 0.8 for my dark areas, and for lighter areas we had 0.55, maybe go 0.45 like that, and then we just adjust the ramp so we only have the black color in the tips like we have here. So I'm not sure how big of a change this will be, like in terms of the render, but you can see there is some variation here, darker, and then it gets to, or lighter, and it transitions to this darker color. So let's see how that looks. And you can see something is darker. Yeah, and we can actually go a bit more aggressive on this just to visualize it. If I put in a value of 1, you can see now this got definitely darker. And if I change the other color to 0.2 maybe, you can see that now it almost feels, obviously she has gold hair now here, but you can totally see the transitioning happening. And because she's dark brown, so we definitely should not go that light, but you can see the effect which this has. So let's just go back to maybe 0.5, and I think the value of 1 is a bit too much, so maybe go 0.8. So we get a bit more color in the roots, and then we fade towards the tip color. So this is pretty much the shading side of the hair. What you want to do, if you want to do some highlights in the hair, it gets a bit more tricky for sure, but it's totally doable as well. You would just need to paint a map, and let's just see if we can actually get any map exported from Mari. Hopefully that works. So let's just head over here, and let's just create a new channel, and it's a black one. And we just call this one highlights, if it will let me do this. Highlights, like that. And now we want to go into the perspective mode, like that. If it lets me do that, hopefully it does. Takes a bit of time. Come on, there we go. All right, so I just want to brush with white and maybe change my size. That's a bit hard to see actually. Maybe we need to enable the shading. Oh, it's lots of lights in here. Anyways, let's just go back to the flat, and let's just try to eyeball it. So I just want to make it not too wide. So this is pretty much what I'm trying to do. So it's a bit of creative thinking now. So I'm just painting on the surface of the skull where I think she would have had highlights. So I'm just painting some values, and obviously this don't need to be round or whatever. You can paint like lighter values, and I think you can go pretty crazy on how it looks. But typically, if it works, if we can export it, I hope, then I can show you how to set this up. And it might look weird now, and it might also look weird in the render, but this is pretty much a probability map what I'm painting right now. So let's just see if I do now export current channel flattened, and I just wanna export UDIM1. I think this should all be correct. And let's just call this highlights. I'm not so sure if I need the UDIM tag. And this needs to be copied. We need to do this up here. I'm not sure about these lashes. It's also super weird that the one is forward facing and the other one is backward facing. So let's just try scanline. Oh, I think actually this worked. No, it didn't. I'm not sure. I didn't see that we got an error this time. But it's also not in my folder, so it might be that we're just writing it somewhere else, which is super weird. Digital Louise. Maybe it doesn't like the spaces. Just try to go up here, test. This is just the last check. If this doesn't work, then it is like that. No, it doesn't look like it's writing. I need to figure out why that is doing that. It's super weird. I don't even know what to do, because I was able to write to this at some point. But anyways, okay, so I will just try to explain the theory of this. So you paint this black and white map, and instead of doing all this fancy stuff, what you can do, you can also you should also be able to plug in stuff in the ramp. So we can try a noise actually. Let's try a noise. Yeah, why not? It could actually work. Let's just do AI noise, and before we get going, let's just what can we do? We quickly just assign a flat shader. Or we just wait. Let's just delete this here. Go to the skin and create it here. I'm trying to generate the noise on the skin, and for that to work, I'm just hiding the hair quickly, and I'm just doing a render. Come on. And the plan is just to get these little pings everywhere. Like, let's see how the noise looks. So yeah, this actually might do it. So we just need to invert it and maybe do a ramp on this. Let's just do range. I meant AI range. Color goes in here. So this should kind of be the highlight map. So we'll see how good this will work. Maybe it will not work at all, but typically this is a theory. So we want a smooth step, and whatever is white will be highlights. Obviously it's everywhere right now, but this could actually just do the trick. So I'm just selecting these two nodes and I'm adding them back in here. So as I said before, we can use a map in the ramp directly. So let's just bring back the hair, and let's just hit play. So it takes some time. We just need to unhide actually, and we need to update. So we generated this noise map, which we will plug into the ramp, but the first test is we will just plug it in directly into the melanin just to see if we can actually get a color variation off of that. And then we will see. Okay, we get the hair. Let's just plug this in directly into the melanin and do isolate. So I think we see those shifts, right? I think I see them. Might be not too obvious, but it was actually the wrong nodes. Sorry, we need to do this actually. So let's see if we do see anything. I don't know. Oh, I do know. So we see the texture on the face, and I think we also see it on the hair. Let's just disconnect this. Go back to the hair. Yeah, I think we see it. Let's just actually just test it, and we know better. So if I do this, yeah, we definitely see those spots now. And it's on the base, so it should travel along the fur, I hope, on the hair. So this is obviously based now on the surface of the hair. So we want to just hook up this shader again, so we have the probability shader. And if let's see what happens if we just plug this into the ramp. So the ramp expects a color. So let's just hook this up and see what happens. Yeah, yeah, I guess it does not work as expected. So you totally need to paint out the map for this. So because now it's super patchy just on the head itself. But it should only be, this is now hooked up to this guy, I think. Yeah. So we totally would need to do this based on a texture set instead of a procedural. So I should have done the test before doing the tutorial, I guess, but typically this should work. I'm not sure now. I need to restart the render, I think. Let's just see if this does it. Update full scene. Ramp goes in there. I think we just need to make sure that we plug in a color again. Right now it's just black, and we need to get a, I think a 0.5 value in here. Yeah, so this is now totally messed up. So as I said, a value of 0.5 maybe, we get back to brown. All right, so this is now the basic hair setup for a human without some weird highlights. And I will do a follow-up video for the highlights alone. And you can see now it might look a bit too dark still. So what we can do, like one thing to test is your render settings. So on default, you might not have enough ray depth. You definitely need the ray depth for the specular. So you can go up to 4 for the hair depth. And the more you bring this up, the more light will penetrate or bounce around in the light. So you can also boost the specular settings if you need to, but typically 1 should be enough. And another thing what I always do in my renders is apply depth of field. And I do that in the basic mode because it's just super fast to read. So this is now her in my render settings and my final render frustum. And if you want to get, like, I have this little preset in the light shader, which you can download from my lightshader.de website, which is just a helper which creates a locator and links the camera to that. So how you do that, you just create a locator, which is just a null object, and you place it where you want to render to focus on. So this is now where it is right now. It's on kind of the iris, pretty much right here. And what I want to do is I want to select the camera and then the locator, and then I wanted to hook up the focus rig. And what it's doing is generating a measure tool, like a distance tool, and it's just piping the distance results into the Arnold render camera under the Arnold tab, and it just connects this to the focus distance. Honestly, this is nothing magical, but it's a nice little helper I set up. So you can see now just by hitting play that the hair is out of focus, and it looks actually very neat. It's a bit strong, I guess. It's a 105 lens, so we can go a bit lower on the aperture, maybe 0.7, 0.5, just to get some kind of value back in the, just some slight, we just want some slight blurriness, so maybe 5 blades. And let's see what the lighting now looks like. I always like to have rim lights, right? So let's just play around with the lighting some more. This is the IBL. Just move that in world space and maybe rotate this some more, so it's a bit more side-lit, maybe like this. And I just want to maybe expose it down by 0.5 stops, so it's a bit darker. And then what I like to do is just create a light rect area light, which is now here. I just scale it up so it's like double the head size, or like almost head size. You want to try to stay in physical values or ranges, so you don't want to go too much, otherwise your specs will be too soft. You don't want to go too low or it will get noisy. So I just want to create this little rim light. I just enabled lighting, so we should see some the area light's hitting her head. So if I boost the exposure, you can see now we get the highlights respecting the hair, boosting it up, and you can totally see that this is doing what it's supposed to. And if it's too low, you can go to your viewport settings. Like if you see some noise, you can boost the anti-aliasing to 16, and you get a lot nicer detail like that. So now it looks really neat, really cool effect. And obviously the light shouldn't be so close to her, like pretty much try to stay in the real world values here. Something like that is reasonable. It's like, I don't know, maybe this is even better. We can move it up and angle it down. And you can also do isolated lighting. So this is now only the backlight. I'm not sure if this works in this mode. I don't think it does. So let's just go to the shading mode and go to this. It might actually work. It's just maybe not stopped up enough. 12. Yeah, we start seeing something here. So let's go back to the lighting mode actually. And if I reselect the light, yeah, it doesn't really work that well. This might be something I need to ask the Arnold guys to implement that in lighting mode. You still have the option to do the isolate selected mode. But anyway, so this is now isolate selected on just the light. And I think it's still not strong enough, so let's just boost the exposure. All right, so slowly we can see the skin. And I think let's just visualize this in 50% and without this. And now you can see where it's affecting, and you can see it's on her neck. We can also look through the selected light like that and angle it a bit. Typically what I do, I just frame the light, selecting it and hitting F. And then I'm just zooming out, so I'm just linked to this light. And if the isolate selected doesn't work for you, you can just hide the other lights, work on this with the one light, and then you have a lot more control to key it or position it properly. So maybe go on 14 for the exposure, like that. And you can, I always like to play around with the spread, maybe 70. It's like kind of more angled. And then we want some round light, and we want definitely a soft edge. We want to give it 2 samples like that. We can angle it down a bit. See if you want to hit the nose. Yeah, we definitely want a rim light, so I was just testing how it was looking. And you can see now how the peach fuzz is reacting to this. It's actually super nice. And we just want some kind of light on her cheekbone here, just to shape it. And then let's just unhide the rest of the lights, see what we get. And you can see now we get this nice rim lit side of hers. It just adds more shape to it. Obviously you want to be able to add more detail if you want, so you can just add more lights to shape it. Like if you want to have a light on her forehead, so just to catch these little flyaway hairs, you can totally do that by just placing more and more lights. So you can, if you can, you possibly can hear the machine is rendering. So yeah, I think that is maybe a bit strong, but you totally see the effect of the little fibers here. So let's just do a smaller region render on this, and maybe go down on the area light by maybe one stop, one number down in exposure halves the intensity. So if you go from 13 to 14, it's double the intense light. Okay, so I went down a bit, might be a bit too much, so let's just go up half a stop, like that. And you can also place more lights for the eyes if you want to have some more interesting pings or something for the tear lines or something like that. So what I can do now is I can just switch to a 200, let's at least go 150% render. And let's see. And obviously, if you have any questions on this setup or workflow, please ask in the chat right now. And because I'm looking at that all the time and trying to give some good answers here, so feel free to ask any questions, and I will be happy to answer. So this is now, let's see, we can see now the nice detail we have just by with all the displacement maps we had. I think it's a bit too blurry if I check for final render settings, so I'm just heading over to the render camera again, and I just go down on my aperture. It's on 0.5, maybe go on 0.3. So this will give us a bit more detail. And yeah, so maybe let's also a good tip is if you want to go for final render settings, what I always tend to do is enable adaptive rendering as well. So what that means is go to adaptive sampling, enable this to set up your max AA samples, maybe 14, and then first play with the threshold and lower your minimum, like the AA will be your default like minimum AA samples. And let's just render and see what we get now based on that. And I disabled the progressive now because we are ready for the final render settings. And so we're just waiting for the renders to come through and we can evaluate the quality we get. Okay, it's still cooking. You can see it takes definitely longer. And for final render settings, I always like to enable the buckets. And yeah, I think it's still fairly noisy, so we totally want to reduce the adaptive threshold. So let's just bring first show render tiles and reduce the buckets maybe to 0.05 and see if this cleans it up. So let's see, it takes definitely longer to render now, which is a good sign. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions. The stream will end like in a few minutes. So be sure to ask away so I can actually reply in time. So I think now the noise threshold is good. So let's just stop the render, disable my frustum there. And just for the tutorial, for the live session, I'm just changing my threshold to 0.8. And we've got two lobes. We just want to, yeah, I think we are good. So let's just render, maybe change this slightly to a bit more threads and just to start the render. Okay, so let's see what the chat is saying. What is the clamping for in general for the render settings? So what the clamping is for, you can specify typically add like a color value each ray type has, for instance. So you can say clamp AA samples and they will not go higher than the certain clamp value. So what a value is, it's like the color intensity. So if you have a really hot light which has a value of 200 or 500, you want to clamp that to maybe 10, so we do not get these really extreme hot fireflies and stuff like that. So this is what clamping is for. It's just a kind of like a debug thing. It optimizes your render times. You will not get as many fireflies and stuff like that. So it will totally help your render times and speed up times for sure. But it's a bit like reducing quality because you don't get the strong bounces and all that. So I tend to use it for indirect, which is on by default nowadays. So indirect bounces will be clamped at a value of 10. That's typically what's happening. I have a pretty big machine here. It has, I think it has 80 cores, which I'm not utilizing right now. I'm just on 60, I think. Let's see. I have a graphics card, a pretty strong GPU card. Let's see if I can see it somewhere. I've got the Quadro P5000 GPU, which has a 16 gigabyte cache, I think. I've got 64 gigs of RAM. I have a Intel, like a dual Intel Xeon processor Gold. I'm not sure if that means something to you. 6148 CPU at 2.4 gigahertz. As I said, it's a dual one, so I have actually 80 threads in total, which is super nice, especially if you have a view like this. It's pretty neat. You can see the utilization. So stuff is definitely cooking a lot faster on my machine for sure. What else? I have a SSD card in here. I think a 512 SSD card for my applications and for yeah, like texture. Like if I have a project, I copy most of the time the files to the SSD to have a bit more faster read and write times. So I think the stream will pretty much end after the render is done. So feel free to get going on those questions. And yeah, let me know if you have some more. And by the way, I really appreciate all the feedback I got on my Instagram where I was setting up this tutorial or this live session actually. So it was super helpful to see all the nice feedback I've got in there. It's super nice and it helps quite a lot to keep me going. And also what I really appreciate is all the help on Patreon. It really motivates me and keeps me going to produce more stuff for you guys. What else? You can see we obviously have this weird displacement now for the eyebrows, and I will definitely figure out on the Mari side why I did not get those maps painted, and I will, I think, update or submit a new render once I have those new textures in place. But yeah, I think it's coming along very nicely. You can see now the nice skin detail we get here. Let's just move this over a bit. Come on, what's happening? Okay. And you can see even the hair works well. It might be a bit too bright on the rim side, but it's definitely working. The peach fuzz is working. It's the groom is a bit too directional, I would say, especially here on the cheeks. You can totally see that there's a pretty strong direction to them, and they should be a bit softer. They read too much. They are like too visible. I don't think they should be that visible in real life. Yeah, so that's something I will definitely work on. But you can see overall the scattering works very well, like the light, how the light is passing through the nostrils here and even through the ears, I mean. So that all works very well. Let's see. Okay, still going. So for Lookdev, how necessary is it to be a good painting texture? Well, the textures are everything, right? So it's very important to be able to paint good maps, or at least get good scans. Like if you want to just paint, like if you want to paint this from scratch, you need to be, I would say, super talented to create really good looking textures. If you use texture on XYZ website, you already have a base diffuse texture and you just paint on top of that. So that is it's an option, and you definitely need to know what you're doing to get a good look, and you need to know how skin works. You need to know how the pores are set up. Like pores are definitely different on the cheeks and on the chin, on the tip of the nose. So all of that is very important to observe or to take some reference from. Yeah, so it's important, but nowadays most of the stuff you get is actually scanned data. So it's mostly plug and play, and you just need to clean it up a bit, which I try to do for the eyebrows and stuff like that. Yeah, so there's still like the shader works a bit weird when it's really strong backlit, so I can adjust that slightly. You can even see it on the brows that they get super pingy on the side here. But what I like is you can totally see the white hairs now. They actually look very nice and realistic on the side. You don't see them as much on the brows because I just have, I think, a 5% chance for them to appear. And the skin detail is really nice. The small hairs and the nostrils are super well done. I think it works overall very well. There still needs to be some kind of adjustments. Like for instance, I would love to see a bit more harder pings on the nose, so I would need to adjust the displacements. So there's still some work to be done, but this is typically the workflow you would be doing. Like getting in the shaders, tweaking the values, remapping some textures and whatnot. So this is pretty much just the workflow. So I'm just saving this into the snapshots folder. This should be here. Like that. Okay. All right, so I've just saved that image, and I will totally add this to the source files for the scene setup here. All right, so this almost brings it to an end. So any last minute questions, feel free to ask away. Yeah, so I hope you like this, and again, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. I really enjoy the support you're giving, and just show your appreciation by subscribing to my YouTube channel and obviously leaving a like, which I already see that 62 people did, which is very nice, and I really appreciate that. I'm mostly active, like socially active on Instagram, where I also post some of my personal stuff, like some renderings I'm doing, or actually some photography stuff I'm doing. I just got a new camera, an Nikon Z6, and I'm shooting quite a lot. So if you want to do that, feel free to follow me on that account as well. So it's just it's pretty much to my Instagram profile, my YouTube profile. You can see this on, here's a URL, and these are kind of the things I'm posting on my channel. So photography, my tutorials, weird stuff, funny stuff, whatever. So all the above. So I would really appreciate that as well. And yeah, so let's see, really appreciate knowledge. Yeah, again, really happy that so much people actually joined. I'm not sure where you guys are from. I've got lots of fans from Europe, from India, from America and all that. So it's really great to have you all follow me, message me, and take the advice I'm giving. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. And yeah, as you, 69, it jumped quite a lot now. So now 69 likes. Thank you very much. And yeah, this video will be uploaded onto my channel. I will do some source files uploading. I will tweak it a bit, and I will work on Louise some more to iron out some things. I will paint out the hairs here on the top and the displacement, and I paint out the brow hair and all that stuff. And I might be tweaking the groom slightly. All right, everyone. So thanks again. Thanks for all the likes. And as I said, share this channel. Send it to your friends. Push. Thank you guys. I will see you in the next tutorial. I'm not sure what it will be about, but it will be soon. So thanks again for tuning in. And yeah, I will see you in the next live stream.